Hi everyone. This video is going to go over lesson 14-1. If you have not already done lesson 14-1, I would recommend that you pause this, turn it off, and go work on it, and then come back to me once you're done with it, because I would rather kind of see what you can do before I explain it to you and give you all the answers. So please try 14-1 lesson, the pages that I assigned, and then come back to this video if you haven't already done them. If you've already done them, great. Let's go over it. So 14-1, and I'm going to pull that up right here, and I'm going to be looking at it on my computer. Okay, so 14-1 is time to the minute, and our goal for this chapter, or for this lesson, is to show and tell time to the minute using a clock. So, some things that I wanted to just remind you guys. I noticed that some of you aren't viewing the videos that I've assigned to you guys. You don't have to do it. It's not required, but I definitely recommend that you do it. These are the videos that we watch in class, you guys. So they're definitely helpful, I think, in understanding what's going on, especially if maybe you don't always have an older sibling or an adult to help you. I think the videos will definitely help you to understand the lessons, especially some of the harder ones. So don't forget to check in your to-do file, and there should be something that says visual learning, and when you click on that, it will show you the Pearson video. Okay, so that being said, let's start with the first page of 14-1. I didn't assign it, but I figured we could work through it together. So it's page 739. And it says, Xander and his mother are flying from New York to Chicago. Their plane is scheduled to arrive at 8:47. How can you use a clock to show this time? Explain how you solved the problem. Okay, so we know that we need to use the clock to show that time, but we also know that we need to explain it, which means that we need to use words, okay? So the girl is telling us to model with math. Show where the minute and hour hands should appear on the clock face at Xander's arrival time. So we can see there that that's called an analog clock, okay? It doesn't tell us the time in numbers like a digital clock, like your phone or your computer or your iPad tells you. This is the kind of clock that hangs on the wall in our classroom, and you guys are always asking me what time it is. So after this, I hope you guys are going to all be ready to tell the time when we get back, and no one's going to have to ask me what time it is, and I'm going to be really excited. So let's do a little review. You should have covered this in first and second grade probably, but I wanted to go over it for those of you that maybe it's new material, or maybe you've just forgotten, no big deal. So I know that some of you might be wanting to take notes. Some of you might just want a refresher. So I took some little notes. Sorry, I just realized that the pink is kind of hard to see. But so keep in mind that the minute hand is the long hand. Okay, so when we're looking at a clock, the analog clock, the long hand is the minute hand. Okay, now one way to remember this is minute is a long word. Okay. The short hand is the hour hand, because the hour, right, is a short word. So it's the short hand. So minute is a longer word, so it's the longer hand. Hour is the short word, so it's a shorter line. Okay, I realized that was probably backwards. Sorry, guys. So what I would like to do is to have you take a second and to draw on your clock in your book if you have not already done so. And then I'm going to go over it. So the first thing you need to do is think about it. So let's see what would be important information. So if I pull this back up. So if we're looking at the word problem, the things that are important that we probably need to circle are that it's 8:47. Okay, so I would circle that time. Then we need to either circle or underline how can you use a clock to show this time, because that's telling us that that is what we need to solve. And then explain how you solve the problem should also be underlined or circled, because that is what they're asking us to do. So that is how we would fully get credit on a test, or even, our daily work, by making sure that we are explaining it. So if you are done drawing on your clock, I'm going to go ahead and explain it. So 8:47. So let's start with the hour. So we know from my little hint, right, that hour is a short word, so hour is the shorthand. So you want to make sure that this hand is shorter. Otherwise, it's going to be very confusing to people who are looking at your clock. So you need to make the little hand for 8 o'clock. Now, a lot of people, when they first start telling time, thinks that this means it should be pointing directly at the 8, but that's actually not exactly correct, okay? When it's at 8 o'clock exactly, the little hand will be touching exactly on the 8. As the time goes past and it gets closer to 9 o'clock, kind of like on a number line, it's going to start moving just a little bit at a time until it gets to 9 o'clock and it'll be right on the 9, okay? So we know that 8:47 is closer to 9 o'clock than it is to 8 o'clock. So your little line should at least be halfway between the 8 and the 9, okay? Not directly on the 8, between the 8 and the 9. So you're going to put your little hand between the 8 and the 9 to show that it's 8 o'clock, but getting close to 9 o'clock. The next part says 47, okay? Now, we know from second grade that the numbers on the clock, we count by 5s, all right? We've talked about this a little bit this year, too. I think one of our math mysteries had counting by 5s on the clock. So if we start at 12, at the 12 at the top of the clock, okay, that's 0, okay, 0, 0. Like 8:00 is 8 o'clock, or 9:00 is 9 o'clock. So this is 0, 0. If we move to the 1, that would be 05. 10, a 2 would be 10. 3 would be 15. 4 would be 20. 5 would be 25. 6 would be 30. 7 would be 35. 8 would be 40. 9 would be 45. Now, if we keep going to 10, that would be 50, and that's too big. So we know 47 goes somewhere between 45 and 50. Now on these clocks, the ones that are labeled with a number, we count by 5s. The little tiny lines in between the big numbers, okay, they count as 1. So you need to get as close to you as you can with the big numbers. So being on the 9 would put us at 45. And we know then we can skip count by 1s instead by going up until we get to 47. So at this point, your minute hand, your longer hand, would be on the 9, which is 45, but we need to move up 2 to get to 47. So the number above, or the little tiny line above the 9 would be 46, and the next one would be 47. So when you're looking at your clock, your little hand, the hour hand, should be falling between 8 and 9, and your minute hand should be between the 9 and the 10 at the second little line above the 9, okay? Now, it says to explain how we solved the problem. So, this is what I would say. If yours is similar, that's great. If it's not, you might want to fix it, okay? But remember, your words do not have to be exactly like mine, as long as they're similar. So, if I was explaining this, what I would say is the hour hand is the short hand. I know that 8:47 is between 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock, so the hour hand should point between 8 and 9 on the clock. The minute hand is the longer hand, because minute is the longer word, and I know that I can skip count by 5s and get to the 9, which is the same thing as 8:45. I then realize I need 2 more, so I go up to 8:46, 8:47, and stop. Okay, so as long as your explanation is kind of like mine, it means you did it correctly. Very good job. So if we look at the bottom part, okay, they're asking us something further. How many minutes before 9 is Xander's plane scheduled to arrive? To show a time after 8, but before 9, where did you draw the hour hand on the clock face? Be as precise as possible. So this is what I was talking about. Your hour hand should not be directly on the 8 because you're getting close to 9 o'clock. So it should be in between the 8 and the 9, maybe slightly closer to the 9. Now, how many minutes before 9 o'clock? Now, we know that an hour has 60 minutes, okay? So if we're trying to find out how much before, what we need to do, I'm going to try to see if I can find a darker color. let's see. Oh, here's one. Okay, so if we know that 60 minutes are in 1 hour, okay, then we know that 8 o'clock plus 60 minutes would give us 9 o'clock, okay? Does everybody see? So 8 o'clock plus 60 more minutes gives us 9 o'clock. So we need to figure out how many minutes until 9 o'clock. So it's kind of like regrouping. If we turn this into a 60, okay, we can then subtract. So we know it's 47 minutes after 8 o'clock. So we need to take 60 minutes, which is an hour, okay, that would bring us all the way to 9 o'clock, minus 47 minutes. So in order to find out how much we have left to go from 8:47 to 9 o'clock, we need to figure out if our goal is 60, which is to be all the way up at the 12 with the minute hand. If we're at the 47, how much from the 47 to the 12, right? 47 to the 00, do we need to do? Now, if we do 47, we can either subtract it, or if you feel more comfortable, dogs, stop. My dogs are being so silly over there wrestling. If you can either skip count on your actual clock, or you can subtract. So if we subtract, we know that we have to regroup the 0. So the 0 goes into a 10 and the 6 goes into a 5. So we then have 10 minus 7 is 3 and 5 minus 4 is 1. So our answer is 13. So if our answer is 13, how many minutes before 9 does his plane arrive? 13 minutes to 9. Or you could write until 9, or you could just write till, which is TIL, 9. I don't really care how you write it. On a test, I would give you credit for all of these. 13 minutes to 9, 13 minutes until 9, 13 minutes till 9, or you could even write 13 minutes before 9. I'm fine with that. Okay, so we then explained the answer to the bottom one, okay? So we did 60 minutes minus 47 minutes. That's how much of the hour we've already done. How much until we get the full hour? We subtract them and get 13 minutes. So we know that it is 13 minutes before 9 o'clock. So we can write that as 13 minutes to 9. And we know that we drew the hour hand between the 8 and the 9. But we know that it can't be directly on the 8 and directly on the 9 because it's not 8 o'clock and it's not 9 o'clock. It's somewhere in the middle. Okay, so now if we turn the page and we're looking on page 740 and it says, how do you tell time to the nearest minute? Now, if you watched the video, you would have seen this lesson in animated form. I'm going to go ahead and go over it just in case you guys didn't watch the video, because when I was looking, it didn't look like very many people had. The clock shows the time a train from Memphis is scheduled to arrive at Central Station. What time is the train scheduled to arrive? Write the time in digital form and in 2 other ways. So digital form means a number and then our ... and then your minutes, right? So if it's 12 o'clock, it would be 12 ... okay, 00, all right? So if we have, the first thing we need to do, okay, is to write it in digital form, and then 2 other ways. Now, what they're meaning by that is by writing, for instance, 13 minutes to 9, or 15 minutes after or past 2, or something like that. So let's look at step 1. Actually, let's look at the girl and see what she's trying to tell us. It's probably a hint. Analog clocks are tools that can help you show and tell time to the nearest minute using minute and hour hands. So that's one of those examples of when they ask what tools make sense, we wouldn't say a scale, we wouldn't say fraction strips, because those wouldn't be the appropriate tools. We would use an analog clock to help us to tell time. The digital form uses numbers and symbols to show and tell time. You can also write time using words and numbers. So that's like I said when I said 13 minutes to 9, or 40 minutes past or after 3. So let's look at step 1. the hour hand is between 12 and 1. So that tells us that the time is after 12 o'clock, but before 1 o'clock. Step 2 says, in 5 minutes, the minute hand moves from one number to the next. So remember, we talked about how you can skip count from one number to the next number in fives. So if we count by fives from the 12, which we know equals 0, 0, right, or just 0, we have to then count to get to the 8. So if we start from the 12, we would go 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. 40 would bring us to the 8. We know we can't skip count another 5 because then we would go past the minute hand. So if we get to the 8, we know that's 40 minutes. Now from there, we know we need to count the little lines, the little tick marks, above the 8 until we get to where the red minute hand is. So then we need to count how many more lines. Well, we can see it goes up 1, which would be 41, and 1 more, which is 42. So the digital time would be 12:42. Now, ways to write that in words would be 42 minutes past 12, okay, or 18 minutes to 1. Now, the way that they figured that out is they took 60 minutes minus 42 minutes and got 18. You could also count all the little tick marks on your clock. It's just going to take you longer, okay? But either one of those are strategies. Now, let's look at the next page. So if we're looking at page 741, this is the one that you guys were supposed to do independently. So, number 1. Construct arguments. Now remember, that just means prove your answer, right? It means you can't just write 5 and walk away. You have to tell us why you know that that's correct. In the Memphis train example, why is 42 minutes past 12 the same as 18 minutes to 1? Explain. So if I was going to explain this, I would say that an hour is 60 minutes. So 42 minutes past 12, okay, is part of the hour between 12 and 1. The total amount of minutes between 12 and 1 is 60 minutes. So if we've already gone 42 of those, we can do 60 minus 42 to find out how much is left, right, to keep going all the way up to the top. And because 60 minus 42 is 18, it's 18 minutes until it will be 1 o'clock. Number 2, an airplane landed at 3:55. Does the clock show the time the airplane landed? Explain. So this one's a little bit tricky, and some of you might have gotten it wrong, and that's okay. The answer is no, okay? And I'm going to tell you why. What is the first thing we learned about the hour hand? They were trying to trick you a little bit. The hour hand is exactly on the 3. What is the only time the hour hand is exactly on the 3? And we know that that's 3 o'clock. Well, 3:55, is it closer to 3 o'clock or is it closer to 4 o'clock? We know that 3:55 is so close to 4 o'clock. So where should the hour hand be? Not on the 3. It should be much closer to 4. So you could say, no, the clock does not show the time because the minute hand is correct. It's on the 55, but the hour hand needs to be very close to the 4. Number 3. In number 3 and number 4, write the time shown on each clock in 2 ways. Okay, so if we're looking at number 3, okay, we can see that the hour hand is almost exactly on the 3, a little past it. And we could skip count starting at the 12, so we know that the hour is 3. We know we need to start at the 12 and count by 5s. 5, 10, well, then we need to stop because we can't go to 15, it's too far. So once we're at 10, which is on the 2, we need to count the little marks to go ahead, and it's 1, 2. So 10, 11, 12. So the time on that clock is 3:12. That's the digital time. Now, if you wanted to write it in word form as your other one, you could either choose. You could say 12 minutes past 3, or you could say And what you would have to do is you would have to subtract. And so you would say 60 minus 12, okay? And we know that that would equal, we take the 0 and turn it into a 10. 10 minus 2 is 8. The 6 needs to be turned into a 5. 5 minus 1 is 4. So we know that it is 48 minutes until, or 48 minutes to 4 o'clock, because that's the hour that's after 3. Now, the way that most people do it is you say whichever one is closer. So is it closer to 3 o'clock or closer to 4? Well, because it's closer to 3 o'clock, most people would say 12 minutes past 3 rather than 48 minutes until or to 4 o'clock, okay? So if I was doing this one, I would have put the digital time, which is 3:12, and then I would have written 12 minutes past 3. But any of those 3 answers that I gave you are correct. Okay, number 4, 5:43. Now, they already gave us the digital time, so we can't write that as one of our ways. It doesn't count. That's cheating. So now we know we need to write 2 different ways in words. So, but they already did some of the math for us, right? So we know that this is 43 minutes past 5 o'clock. So 43 minutes past 5. That's one of your answers. We then know that we need to figure out 60 minutes minus 43 to figure out how much until we get to 6 o'clock. Well, we know that 60 minus 43, right? We cross out the 0, make it into a 10. We cross out the 6 and make it into a 5. And then once you solve it, you would know that it is 17 minutes to 6 o'clock, or 17 minutes until 6 o'clock. Okay, so your answers would be 43 minutes past 5, 17 minutes to 6, okay, or until 6. Sometimes when we say 2, it's a little confusing to me because I feel like you guys sometimes then confuse that with the number 2, and we're talking about the word 2, like T-O. So it's up to you which one you want to use. It doesn't really matter to me. All right, now let's look at number 5 through 7. In 5 through 7, write the time shown on each clock in 2 ways. So let's look at number 5. So I have to make it bigger so I can see. Okay, so we can see that the hour hand is the short one. It's the blue one. It's after the 11, but before the 12. So we know it's not gotten to the 12 o'clock yet, okay? So our hour is going to be 11. I recommend writing the digital time as one of your ways, unless it's a digital clock. But since this isn't, I would use digital time as your first answer. So we know that it's 11. We now know that we need to count our minutes. So we start at 12 as 0, 0, 5, 10, 15, 20. The minute hand is exactly on the 4, which we know is 20. So this one's a little bit easy. It's 11, 20. Now, your second answer could be a combination of, it doesn't matter which one you want to do. You could either do 20 minutes past 11, or you could do 40 minutes to 12. Because if we take 60 minutes minus 20 minutes, we get 40 minutes. So we know that in 40 minutes, it will be 12 o'clock. Okay, let's look at number 6. 7:39. They already gave us the time because it's a digital clock. So we need to write it in 2 different ways in words. So we know the first one, the easiest one usually, is 39 minutes past 7. Okay. Then we know that we have to take 60 minus 39 and figure out the answer, which we find out is 21. And so then we're going to say that it is 21 minutes to 8, or 21 minutes until 8, okay? Whichever way makes sense to you. All right, number 7. So let's look at the hour hand first. The hour hand is the little one because the word hour is little. It's between the 8 and the 9, so we know that it's not 9 o'clock yet, so we have to put 8 in the hour spot. Okay, if we do the minutes, if we start on the 12 as 0, we go 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. Now, we can't go to the 45 because that would be on the 9, and we're not there yet. So if we start at the 8 as 40, the first one is 41, the second one is 42, the next one is 43, and the red is on the 44. Now, I know in your book, like I just zoomed in to look at that, if it was really small and you wrote 43, that's fine. So I would take either one of those answers on your work, okay? But when you're taking your test, if we end up taking the test online, you might want to try to zoom in to see and make sure where the minute hand is. Otherwise, it might count it wrong. But we can deal with that when we get closer to time. I can also adjust it a little bit in the grade book. But one thing that I find that's really helpful is if you take your finger and follow along the minute hand and keep going until your finger, usually I try to use my fingernail and see where my fingernail ends up. That kind of helps you zero in a little bit, because sometimes our eyes get a little confused. Another thing that helps me is if you take your pencil and you follow along the minute line with your pencil and then extend the line to see which one it touches, you would see that it touches the 44. So anyway, that's just a tip. So we know that the time is 8:44. I would do that one as digital. Then you can also list in words. So we know that you could write 44 minutes past 8, or you could do 60 minus 44 and get 16, and you could say 16 minutes until 9, or 16 minutes to 9. Okay? All right. Let me switch over so that we can go over the other page that you needed to do. Okay, so the other page that I asked you to do is page 743, and it says at the top of the page, another look. You can tell time to the minute in different ways. The hour and minute hands of the clock face show the time. And the boy is telling us, remember to be precise. Use pictures, words, numbers, and symbols to describe time to the exact hour and minute. And it says in digital form, this time is written as 10:15. You can also write the same time as 15 minutes after 10. Belle, come here. She's barking. So if we look at numbers 1 through 3, they want us to write the time shown on each clock in 2 ways. So let's look at number 1. So the hour hand is between the 8 and the 9. It's the blue one, the short one. And we know because it hasn't reached the 9, it's still 8. It's still 8 o'clock. So we know that it's 8, and then now we need to figure out our minutes. So if we start at the 12 and we count by 5s, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. The 8 is 40, and we can see that the red line is exactly on the 8, so the time is 8:40. Then if you need to write it a second way, you could choose between 40 minutes past 8, or you could do 60 minutes minus 40 minutes and get 20 minutes and write 20 minutes to 9, or 20 minutes until 9. Okay. Number 2, 1:49. Now, we know that that's already given to us in digital form, so we have to write our 2 answers as word form. So we could say 49 minutes past 1, or 11 minutes to 2. And that's why that is sometimes confusing when we're talking about it. So if you would rather write 11 minutes until 2, that's fine. Number 3. Well, let's see. The hour hand is the blue one. It's the short one between the 4 and the 5. It has not reached the 5 yet, so we know it's still 4. So it's 4 o'clock, right? But then we have to put our minutes. So our hour is 4. Now we're going to start for the minutes on the 12. We're going to skip count by 5s. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. We cannot go any further. Okay, so now we have to count by 1s, all right? So if we start on the line after the 6, that would be 31, then 32, then 33, okay? So I would say that this time is 4:33. If you wrote 4:34, that's also okay. Now, when you're writing your other 2 choices, it partly depends on whether you wrote 33 or 34, but you're going to say 33 minutes after 4, or you're going to take 60 minus 33, and you're going to get 28 So you would say 28 minutes until 5. Okay. I heard you barking, naughty girl. Come here. Do you want to say hi? Come here. Come here. You want to say hi? Belle's saying hi to you guys. She doesn't know what I'm talking to because she doesn't understand why I'm talking to the computer. Mwah. Stop barking. She likes to bark when she hears neighbors. Okay. So for numbers 4 through 9, we're going to do the digital time. Okay. So we don't need to write any times in words because they've already given us the words. So 12 minutes to noon. Okay. So what that tells us is we need to take 60 minutes minus 12. You should get 48 minutes. Okay. So if it's 48 minutes before noon, we know noon is 12. Well, if it's the hour before 12, we know it's 11. So the time for there would be 11:48. That one's a little tricky. Number 5, 21 minutes after 2. So we know that it hit 2 o'clock. It went 21 more minutes. So it's 2:21. I find that the after ones are a lot easier. Number 6, 30 minutes past 9. So here's a difference, right? One person used after, one person used past. Either one is fine, okay? When I'm talking like to another person in real life, I usually say after, but past is fine too. Number 6, 30 minutes past 9. So we know that it was 9 o'clock, 30 more minutes, so it's 9:30. Number 7, 2 minutes after 7. So it was 7 o'clock. They went 2 minutes, so it's 7:02, 7:02. That one's a little confusing if you didn't realize that there should be a 0 there, right? If you write it as 7:02, you can see that it looks very silly. So make sure you write 7:02, okay? Just like when we sometimes write our birthdays. Number 8, 45 minutes to 6. Now, that tells us that it is not at 6 o'clock. It's before 6 o'clock. So the hour before 6 o'clock is 5. So we know the hour has to be 5. And we know that in 45 minutes, it's going to be 6 o'clock. So we need to take 60 minus 45, and we get 15. So we know that it is 5:15 because it's not 6 o'clock yet. It's 5:15. Number 9 says 4 o'clock. That just means that our minutes are 0. So the way that we write that is 4:00. Okay? If you have any questions about this lesson, please reach out to me and let me know. You can also try watching the video. It might help, okay? We'll be doing some review of the 3 time lessons and then the problem solving one before we take the test. So if you had difficulties, don't even worry about it. We're going to keep working through it, and I will see you on here for 14-2. If you have not yet done 14-2, please do it before you watch the video, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Bye.